Like so many musicians of my generation, it was seeing the Beatles.
Can you guys hear that?
Yep. That's a winner.
All right. Good.
We off and running?
Yep, we're ready.
Good deal. Well, hey, we want to go ahead and get started. We want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here with us. We have, Adam, we've got classroom teachers from junior high school and high school classrooms, marketing, video, and a few other areas. District officials that are music fans. We've invited them here today. And just really an honor to have Adam Reeder here with us today. It's a long, short story how I came to appreciate Adam's work and know him, but he's become such a sort of an icon of music, and his experiences of interviewing over 500 artists over the years and developing a reputation, not only as a sincere and capable interviewer, but somebody that does his homework, someone that does his research and has found that music is a great way to tell a story. And that's where I just think he's a storyteller. You're an exceptional audio-visual person. You started your own YouTube channel. There's all kinds of angles that we can take with this today, but we're honored to have you here with us in the Weber School District, Adam, and thank you for taking the time to be with us. And I'll just turn the time to you. We've got an hour or so to work with, and we'll leave some time for questions at the end. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions from people about the kinds of experiences and people that he's met. So I'll turn the time to you, Adam. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Oh, great. Great to be here. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so I had the opportunity to meet Rod, a couple of months ago. We've had a couple of great conversations, and it's always an honor to talk with schools, and I'll just go into it. So I actually did a similar presentation to this at Google about a year and a half ago, and gosh, time flies. And then they invited me back just about a year ago to do this again, right before the pandemic. And so they actually asked me to come out for Google Day to present about evergreen content. And that's what I want to talk about today, about creating great content. And I know there are many people out there. TV is gone, cable TV is gone. A lot of mediums are dying, but I know all of my kids, they consume all of their content on YouTube. YouTube is the new TV. And so, obviously Google owns YouTube. And so evergreen content, the definition of evergreen content is simply content that is always relevant. It's not anything that ever ages. A lot of content on YouTube is current events, and they may talk about something that's happening politically or socially or something, and then within 2 weeks, that topic is gone, or that time has passed, and people will hardly ever watch that video again. But evergreen content is something that is always relevant, that even 20 years from now, somebody can watch and gain something from. Where it got its name is much like the way that evergreen trees retain their leaves all year round. So interesting and relevant content that never becomes dated. And so I'm going to go ahead and share this presentation, this slide deck here as we go through, and I'll share some videos and give you a little bit of background on my story. Can everybody see that? Rod, can you see that now?
It's great. Yep. Okay,
perfect. Okay, so interesting and relevant content that never becomes dated. This is, of course, necessary in order to be found by online search engines. And today what I'm going to do is discuss the importance of evergreen content through 4 main points for creating great content for YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. And I'm going to talk about the who, what, why, and how, starting with who. Who am I and why should you care? Rod gave me an introduction there. Maybe I'll give you a few more reasons why maybe you should care. And that's what we want to do is we're presenting to people, as people are consuming our content that we're creating. We have to give people a reason why they should tune in. Like I said, my name's Adam Reeder. I was given the nickname of Professor of Rock. That is not self-professed. The nickname was given to me by the Beach Boys when I did an interview with them. And so, you know, I interview rock stars for a living, and that's a pretty awesome job. It's a dream job for sure, one that I never even knew that I wanted. It kind of happened by chance, but I've spent the last, gosh, now it's going on about 7, 8 years, almost 8 years, building a huge library of evergreen content. And so a little bit about that, some quick info on Professor of Rock. Our mission is to tell the video history of popular music, song by song, straight from the artists who created the music from the 1950s to present day. So I've interviewed pretty much everybody from the decades from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. So we have thousands of inspirational stories behind the songs. Essentially, there are many documentaries on the greatest songs of all time, including over 500 #1 hits. And we're coming up on 600 total interviews in that time and about 700 hours, well, actually 1,000 hours now of 4K video content. And so just to give you an idea of just a few of the people of the 600 I've interviewed, I'm going to go ahead and play this this promo that will give you an idea of a few of those people.
Shifting the soil, our blood runs thicker than oil. It's like erosion cutting straight to the core. No human nature ever felt this before. And we become an unbreakable vow. I wanna hold you up higher than love, because it feels like flying. Like everyone else says, this is the coolest interview I've ever done. Like, seriously, like the best.
You're a good interview, my man.
Oh, thank you.
Serious. I'll brag about you. I'll get you more business. Who do you want? I'll get them for you.
I consider you among the 3 best interviewers out there.
You're just a font of information. I don't even know some of this stuff.
That was like the best interview ever. That was great.
Oh, thanks, man.
You're good at this.
I think that's the best intro I've ever gotten.
Where do you do? You've done research, boy, I'll tell you. You know my career better than I do.
You're a walking encyclopedia. Incredible.
That was like therapy for me, man. I'm like, I'm going to go back and like meditate on what we just talked about.
Man. You should be writing my book. Yeah.
You really are the professor.
So could you guys hear that? I just wanted to check to make sure it's still working.
Yeah, it was
Rod?
great, Adam.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, so those are a few of the people I've
You've
interviewed.
got our attention now, Adam.
It's really it's hard to do 600 people in 2 minutes there, but that's just just kind of a few of the people that I've had the blessing and opportunity to interview. But it's interesting, whenever I talk to people who are familiar with what I do for a living, they always ask me the same question. I get it about 99% of the time. They always say, who's your favorite interview and why? I think even Rod asked me that when we talked, but I've been asked that question, gosh, 1,000 times, and it's hard to answer because there have been so many amazing conversations with amazing artists that I've looked up to all my life. So that's hard to say. I'll probably tell you at the end, though. But music has always been my lifeblood, which takes me to the next point, which is what? As I said previously, evergreen content should be interesting and relevant. So the question really becomes, what kind of content is always relevant to every age and demographic? For me, music fits that description, better than anything that I've ever experienced. According to recent data, actually, music and musicians are the most followed, liked, and shared content in all of social media. They make up about 70%. It's more than actors, politicians, athletes, religious figures, etc. So if you add that to video, music and video, it's almost unbeatable because video traffic accounts for over 80% of all consumer internet traffic, and that's just going to continue to rise. Also, 90% of consumers say that a video helps them make a buying decision and that they'll retain 95% of a message if they see it on a video, as opposed to only 10% if they read it. So that's extremely powerful when you're creating content in this world and you want to do it for a living. Combining music and video is just a tsunami of empowerment. It's because, I believe that music it's truly the universal language. It's the thread that weaves every facet of our of what we do together. It's a supreme instigator of sweeping social change. In times of resignation, I mean, music creates a revolution. And for everybody who's on this call, I know that you probably feel the same way. Certain songs, when you hear them, they're like a time machine. They take us back to those moments that we want to experience over and over again. It's just potent how a song can do that. I don't think there's anything else in the world that can do that quite like a song can, where it is a time machine. Scents or smells are kind of like that, but you can't get like hundreds of smells in an iPod or an iPhone and go directly to that. So music is so accessible in that way. Songs serve as hallmarks of our own personal history. And as a human family, whether in joy or adversity, music has always been that uniting force. So for me, the what of creating evergreen content is music, but many things can be your what. But if you want to speak to the masses with your content and do this for a living, I found it needs to be something universal when you're creating that kind of content, which takes us to the why, which you can see up on the screen there. The why and the how. I'm going to cover those the only way I know, and I'm going to do that throughout. This is from my own experience, which is interviewing artists and creating content from that. So to support some of my ideas, I'm going to go ahead and feature videos of some of these artists that I've talked with, and they'll give you some of that insight. So let's talk about why. For me, the why starts with knowing your purpose. Why are you creating what you are creating? My why, that started back in a small town that I grew up in with my dad. So this is my origin story. Now, everybody has an origin, and it's significant because if you look at the box office over the last decade, comic book and superhero movies have absolutely dominated the competition, and they all focus on the origin story, So the why did, Batman or Spider-Man become who or what they are, what made them, and what motivated that. So everybody's interested in that. So my origin story is this. Like I said, I grew up in a tiny town in Blackfoot, Idaho. It's actually smaller than the town that you guys are in. It's otherwise known as the potato capital of the world, Blackfoot, Idaho. Now, growing up, my dad and I, we were always at each other's throats. We couldn't see eye to eye on just about anything. But the one thing that did bring us together was music. And it's interesting because a lot of advertisers out there, they show that bonding relationship of fathers and sons through sports, playing catch in the backyard or throwing the football or whatever. But they hardly ever show the bond of music. But it's definitely there, and it's really important. So I used to ride around with my dad in his old pickup that he had, and we'd listen to the radio, and he'd share stories about the songs that he listened to growing up and his own memories of the first time that he heard that song. So, you know, and also like instead of like Mother Goose, my dad put me to bed with stories about the Beatles and the Eagles and, you know, Bruce Springsteen and Motown. And I gained a real love and respect for those great artists and songs because of that. So a few years ago, actually, our camera crew packed up our gear and we traveled down to Idaho. And I had the opportunity to interview my dad about this. It was really cool. Here's just a quick insight from that.
When he was younger, we butted heads quite a bit because we didn't see eye to eye on lots of things, but we did see eye to eye on music. Adam always had all kinds of interest in all kinds of music. We always were doing work out in the shop, and I had a 8-track player out there, so we would listen to that all the time. Most of the stuff I had was old from when I was in high school in the 70s, late 60s, so maybe that's why Adam likes the old music. Sometimes I'd catch Adam in the shop by himself with the music full blast and playing a broom or something as a guitar or a microphone. I was always interested in music when I grew up, so I know the background about these old artists, Beatles and Creedence Clearwater. And Adam was always curious about them, so we would always ask questions, and I knew a few stories about him, so I would pass those on to him. We would always listen to oldie stations. Some of these one-hit wonders would come on, and it was always give you $1 million if you can guess who this is or how many notes. So I would always quiz Adam about when we'd listen to the radio, who it was singing. After a while, he didn't get anything wrong. I quit playing with him because I'd lose. Adam would listen to anything he could get his hands on, whether it be current or old, and he always had a great interest in anything trivial. I think he has a photographic memory, but anyway, he always had a mind full of trivial nonsense sometimes.
Yeah, that's pretty funny because ironically, my high school English teacher, he used to call me out in front of class all the time when I was a junior and a senior, and he'd just make fun of me. He'd say, "Oh, here's Adam Reeder, the king, the king of useless information." He'd always scold me and he'd say, "You're wasting your time and your mind with your nose in a book all the time about rock stars or rock music." And he'd always say, "You'll never use any of that useless nonsense in the real world." But interestingly enough, I use it every single day. So pretty excited about that. When I was a kid growing up, they had this show on every week, and a lot of your teachers will know this, but they still have it today, but it's Ryan Seacrest that does it. But it was the American Top 40 Countdown with Casey Kasem, where he would count down the 40 biggest songs in the U.S. and he'd play them and he'd tell stories about them. And I would memorize those songs and chart positions. I'd write them down in my notebook, and I would read anything that I could get my hands on about artists and their songs. And over the years, I've collected over 5,000 books on pop music, and I've scoured through them all, read them all. And for some reason, I retain that knowledge. And I think we're all like that. We retain the knowledge that's exciting to us, that we're passionate about. I can't remember the 5 items that my wife needs me to pick up at the grocery store or why I walked into the front room, but I can remember the lyrics to just about every 80s song out there. Anyway, I digress. But music made me who I am. So again, knowing your purpose is paramount and really the underlying theme of this whole thing. So as you try to find your why, your overall purpose, you move into the how. How do you make interesting and relevant content that's evergreen that'll last forever? So a Professor of Rock is based on 4 key points that you'll see up there. And one of them is, the first one, be specific. Second is go the distance. Third is passion plus sincerity. And then telling real stories. So first of all, when you're creating great evergreen content, I believe that you have to be specific to tap into true authenticity for your audience or your subject. So let's talk about that for a second. Be specific. When I interview artists, most of them have been interviewed like thousands of times, and they hate interviews. And for good reason. They hate them because they get asked the same question over and over again. And a lot of times interviewers will ask controversial questions to try to get a rise out of them. And because of that, the answers are sometimes, they're like canned responses, and they're repetitive. And the same thing can happen with the way that we create content. It can turn into the same old, what they call it, clickbait, that everybody hates or loathes because it lacks originality. For instance, when I do an interview, the first question I always ask is essential to setting up the entire conversation. I always want to know what I already mentioned. I want to know their origin story. When I ask them their why, though, I'm very specific about that. Most of the interviews that I watch where they do this, the interviewer, they ask the same question. They say, like, who are your influences? But that's not specific. It's a canned question, which usually comes with a canned response. So I always ask very specifically, I say this, I look them right in the eye and I say, let's go back to the very beginning. What was the exact moment that kicked open the door to your mind and made you want to pursue the path of music? It dials it down to just one moment that blazed their trail or motivated them. And here are a few examples that have come from that question.
Like so many musicians of my generation, it was seeing the Beatles play on Ed Sullivan. And that was really the moment when the light bulb went on and it just opened up the tops of everyone's heads to the possibility of what could be. But I think it was different in the case of myself and my sister because we wanted to do it. We didn't just want to be the girlfriends of the Beatles. We wanted to go out and be the Beatles,
Right.
And be the experience.
When I found Nirvana, it hit me so hard. It changed my life.
Yeah, that was kind of like our Ed Sullivan moment, right?
It was like that scene from Wizard of Oz where suddenly just the world is in color.
Yeah.
I was a completely different human after that.
My religion is music. I really do, have such a respect and love and admiration for what I get to do.
Well, I believe that God is music, So when you make music, that's God talking to you.
One day, my dad came to our little basement flat in San Francisco with a bunch of, I thought it was wood, planks and things. Yeah. And he put it together, and in the middle of the night, or maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, for the first time, my brothers and sisters and I heard the piano played. Dad worked all day like Mom did, and he was in his work clothes. He was a painter. He painted people's houses. And he was all with his paint stuff on, and he was putting this stuff together. And it took a long time, and we all went to bed. And we were awakened by this sound that we'd never heard playing the piano. We don't have a piano.
Yeah.
Well, we did then. We never knew that Dad could play the piano. And that was the genesis of my music. From that time on, I sat by my father's knee and listened to him play the piano and sing songs. And over the years, I think I've recorded everything that Pop ever sang when he was, at that point.
Wow.
So that's how it all started.
So yeah, those are some great experiences from artists where you can see the difference there. If I would have just asked them, who are your influences, they would have just said, oh, I like Nirvana, or I like this band, I like that band. And we probably wouldn't have got such personal stories. But when I asked them a specific a specific question that asked them to go back the memory that made them want to do that, then you get these magical moments that not only do they never share. And what's important about that is that you're putting content up that people have never seen. And so going on to the next point, go all the way or go the distance. And as they say in the movie Field of Dreams, if you've ever seen that, they say, go the distance, the voice that the farmer hears in the field is go the distance. If you build it, they will come. And the second thing they say is go the distance. You got to leave nothing to chance, leave no stone unturned. When creating content, you have to do the work. That is really important, the research. When I do an interview, and it doesn't matter if it's an interview or if you're talking about a certain subject, you have to know the material inside and out so that you are an expert, so that people will want to keep coming back to watch your content. When I do an interview, I always go the distance. Most of the people I talk to, I normally know their career and their music inside and out, but I still personally do anywhere between 12 to 15 hours of extensive research and planning days before the interview. I know that sounds crazy, but I do. I go inside and out, and I make sure and check my facts so that I know, so that, you know, I want to create content that is fact checked and that is relevant and that is real. So that's why they say sometimes in the interview, you know more about me than I do, which honestly, that's been said in almost every interview that I've done. It's not bragging or anything like that. It's just I always set the bar so that I get that, because then I know that I've done my work. I don't want to be disappointed walking away from an interview. A lot of times I have one chance to interview these artists, and some of these artists sadly have passed away. And so it's really important for me to get their story. I want every interview that I do to be the best, so I put in the work. Now, to give you an example of that, when I was interviewing Johnny Resnick, the frontman of the Goo Goo Dolls, a few years back, he gave me, because I had done some research, I got this really cool moment that I shared with him that he didn't even know. And he's actually sent me several emails over the years saying, thank you so much for bringing this thing to my attention. You'll see here in a second. And then there's a cool story, a quick little thing after that with Huey Lewis when he participated in something. And I did this research, and I mean, I didn't find this stuff. Well, I'll explain it after I'll show you the video. So here we go.
You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be. I want to ask you about a specific line, the closest to heaven that I'll ever be.
Yeah.
You probably know this, but Mark Kelly had that, the astronaut, had that put on his wife, Gabby Giffords, the senator, had it put on her ring, engraved in the inside of her ring.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Whoa, man, that's crazy.
Isn't that cool?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Captain Mark Kelly, who, great astronaut. And of course, Gabby Giffords, a great survivor of that accident, that shooting. That's just amazing.
We read that you had an inscription in her wedding ring.
Yes.
The astronaut wrote in her ring, "You're the closest to heaven that I've ever been."
You're the closest to heaven?
Yes. That's true.
He heard that line, and in an interview, he talked about it. And it's really cool.
I'm getting goosebumps.
You were talking to Willie Nelson about your golf game.
Yeah.
And then Bob Dylan comes up and talks to you, and he knew about sports. I mean, he knows all about modern music.
Yes. We were playing. We're taking a break, and Willie Nelson comes up and says, "I hear you're playing golf." I said, "Yeah, man. I hear you do." He says, "Yeah, what do you do?" We put our clubs on the bus. I said, "That's what we do too, man. It kills time. It's great." He says, "I know it's great." And we're doing this, and Bob sees that and comes over and goes, "Are you guys talking about golf?" Incredulously. And we said, "Yeah." He says, "You play golf on the road?" I said, "Yeah." He says, and Bob, I'll never forget, he goes, "Man," he says, "that's outrageous." I said, "No, Bob. Nashville skyline was outrageous. This is just golf."
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, well, that was a thrill.
I have a good story about that you don't know.
Yeah. Paris, France?
Oh, how did you find out? I mean, I think I've maybe told that story once.
So, just to kind of give you an idea there, when I did the interview with Johnny Resnick, I found that information like on a Google search, like on page 21, as I was researching the song. Maybe even found it in one of the books that I have. I'm trying to remember. But knowing that created a magical moment that, like I said, he sent me emails throughout the years. He didn't know about that. And then, Huey Lewis, that was a pretty funny story. And it actually makes more sense if you know that Bob Dylan released an album called Nashville Skyline that was pretty outrageous. So that was pretty funny just to get a really cool story there. And then that Kenny Loggins thing. So it's really, really important to do the research and go the distance so that you have content that separates you from everybody else. And then the third thing is passion plus sincerity equals vulnerability. And let me explain that. If you combine, being specific and going the distance with passion plus sincerity, I mean, you'll be unstoppable. And this really can't be taught. You're either passionate and sincere about your content or you're not. That's why you've got to pick a subject or something that you're truly passionate about, whether it's music or movies or sports or politics or video games, whatever it is. When you combine true passion and sincerity, it creates the jewel of the crown of evergreen content, vulnerability. And I have to say that you shouldn't be fooled by the belief that controversy sells. It really doesn't, especially now that we've been through this pandemic. It really doesn't in the times that we live in. It's at least not in the long run. I really, truly believe that people today want something real and they want something positive. And I believe that they can see through the fakers and the takers, people out there. And there's so much content out there that they can choose from. That's why it's so important for these things to happen, because you want them to be able to use their time that they have on your content. So for passion and sincerity to ignite, you have to really believe in what you're doing. And for me, there is a real conviction in our mission. I truly believe that, excuse me, that what we're doing is vital, because we're losing legends every day. I mean, just in the last few years, I mean, we lost one of my heroes, Eddie Van Halen, David Bowie, Prince, George Michael, Tom Petty, Glenn Frey of the Eagles. There are several rappers that we've lost over the last few years. Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, Chuck Berry, who basically invented rock and roll. That's just to name a few. In my heart, I know that we need to capture their essence, the core of their creative fire before they leave this world, so that 100 years from now, the coming generations will not only discover their music, but also who they were as people and as creators. So that's exactly why evergreen video content can be so significant. I mean, can you imagine if we would have had this kind of technology that we have now centuries ago? Can you imagine if somebody had a filmed interview with William Shakespeare or Joan of Arc or Beethoven in 4K? I mean, the technology that we have is truly remarkable. So we've got to make it count. Anyway, that's really step one, having real conviction in your content, because consumers or viewers of your content, they can see through something that's only trying to sell them or manipulate them into a feeling. They have to be able to believe you. In my experience with interviewing artists, the passion I feel fuels a sincerity that I can't define. I can't fake it. It's something like, when I do an artist interview, it's like Christmas morning for me, winning the lottery, my favorite team winning this World Series, and a lobster dinner all rolled into one. So it's really something exciting for me. I'm like a kid in a candy store. It's just magical because I get to talk to the person who created the soundtrack of my life. So I always tell these artists exactly what their music means to me and the memories that are tied to it, and how their music got me through, bullying or depression, or how it was the song that I put on a mixtape for my crush. That's something we did back in the day. We made mixtapes, like playlists, but on a cassette tape. And I try to place their music in the context of our culture and in history. And in the art, and the end of all the interviews, the artists, they can truly feel it. So passion, as you could probably see, is contagious, and it creates an energy where sincere thoughts and feelings flow freely. It's pretty amazing what can happen. Some pretty incredible things can happen. So I interviewed Carlos Santana, who's one of the greatest guitarists of all time, and he was a force of just positive wisdom. And especially, he actually taught me something from that interview early on that I use in all of my interviews about gratitude. So I'm going to just show you that really quick.
Every person is born with an inner and outer support system, and they're more than anxious and willing, with enthusiasm, to open doors for you. I like reaffirming to artists working it out in the garage right now, man. Don't worry about the support system. It's going to come. In fact, it's already there. They're waiting for you to get your own fingerprints together. Everybody has their own identity, individuality, and uniqueness. So don't use so many pedals, because then you're going to lose that immediately. Just plug into the damn amplifier and trust that you are the sound. Believe me, I'm a testament of it happens in abundance. Like, my day don't start at all, man. No matter what I do, whether I drink coffee or brush my teeth or take a cold shower, The day don't start until I say, thank you, God. That's when it starts for me. And I go, because I feel the energy in my body going, oh, he deferred to God instead of me, the ego, being in control. Because the ego is very, very controlling, domineering, and all of it has to do with fear. When you have trust, you get thrust, velocity, and traction. And when you don't trust nobody, you're crawling.
Yeah, I love that interview because he was such a force of positive energy. And I don't know if you caught that where he said, you don't need all these pedals. Just plug into the amplifier and know that you are the sound. That's very symbolic to life, that we don't need to, a lot of guitarists use pedals to use their sound. But what he's saying is be yourself, go out there and show who you are, and that passion will shine through. And I love what he said about gratitude. And when he said that about gratitude, the first thing he does is thank, is be grateful for what he has. Doesn't matter what you believe in, what religion you believe in. Gratitude to me is very, very important. Whatever your belief is, if you're grateful for the things that you have, and great things happen from that. And from there, I actually ask every artist that I interview what they're most grateful for at the end of the interview. And you'd think that the answer would be the same, but you get so many great responses of what these guys are grateful for. So as I said, passion and sincerity equals vulnerability, where they become very vulnerable and they share things about them. They're very personal that can really ignite people. It happens because of mutual trust and respect. And so I'm going to go ahead and skip the next one. I do have another video, but I'll get to I know we're running short on time, but the video that I skipped was a guy named Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction, where he shared a very personal story about his mother, who actually committed suicide. But he told a really personal story about how he learned from that, and that wouldn't have happened without a trust that I built throughout the interview. So here's some of the data. The way I know that this kind of content that I've described to you works is through data. We all love data because data gives us some kind of indication that our theories are based on reality and not just an assumption. And when you're creating a YouTube channel, you have to know what you have and that it is working, and that's really important. So when artists have shared our content on social media, we've done extremely well in comparison to much bigger companies or organizations. Some of the examples, Rolling Stone, Billboard, ABC News, when Journey, the band Journey, was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they called me and asked me if I would do a video piece. And they have a lot of different entities out there that were doing news stories and video stories. And they shared it on their social media. Journey did all of these different stories. And our content actually beat out a lot of these, including the Late Show with Stephen Colbert and Guitar Player and HBO and Rolling Stone, like I said, the likes, shares, and comments. And I know it's because of some of the personal nature of the things that Journey got into about their songs. And then, moving on, this kind of shows our daily content, which we've been live on YouTube. What happened is when the pandemic hit, we decided to release our content up on YouTube. We actually didn't really have any content before that. And in the last year, our monthly average, we're getting 50 million impressions. We're creating 90 minutes of evergreen content every week, Monday through Saturday. We got multiple shows supplemented by the 600 artist interviews that I previously mentioned. We're actually at almost 270,000 subscribers. I updated this about a week ago, but we're growing by about 800 to 1,000 subscribers a day without any marketing, just word of mouth. We're on pace for 1 million subscribers over the next year. We have 99% positive reviews across 350 videos that we've created over the last year. That's over 300,000 reviews, and then 2.5 million unique monthly viewers. And we're outperforming, like I said, those prominent bands on there. And a lot of artists share our content all the time. Over 120 artists have shared our content on their social media accounts. Just in the last week, we had The Who and John Lennon's official account share some of our content. So that's pretty exciting there. So the last thing that I want to talk to fans and viewers out there, they want to sift through what is real. And so telling real stories is what it's all about. this is almost a certain result if you can get the first 3 points, if you can be specific, if you can go the distance, and passion plus sincerity equals vulnerability. If you execute all those well, then you'll be able to tell real stories, and you can tap into something truly timeless and authentic that when seen by the masses might not only entertain them, but it may even change the way that they look at the world, which is really important. And this has happened a few times to me. And when it does, it's like, time stands still. It's an amazing experience. I want to set up one such experience that will kind of end this, and then we'll get to questions. I'm going to set this up. So this is Graham Nash of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and he's telling the story of the song Teach Your Children, which is one of the great songs of Crosby, Stills, and Nash's catalog. It's a song for parents and children to try and understand that each generation goes through its own kind of, as they say, its own kind of hell, like growing pains and the trials that they experience, and that each the parent and the child should respect and learn from one another. And this is most vital in the chorus, where it gives a perspective from teach your children well in the first chorus, then it changes it to teach your parents well. And then it says to both of them, the lyric is feed them on your dreams, the ones they pick, the ones you'll know by. And then it ends on this: don't ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh and know that they love you. So here's the video.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by.
Here's what happened basically with Teach Your Children. I'd been collecting photographs for about 6 months in 1968. I've never told any gallery owner or exhibition owner how to place my photographs, not my particular personal photographs, but my collection of photographs. I never tell them how to hang them, because they know their gallery or their exhibition space much better than me, right? So I'm very curious as to, when you put a photograph next to a photograph, they talk to each other, and they better have a nice conversation, else they shouldn't be together, right? And I'm curious as to how gallery owners and exhibition people see the work and how they would present it. In this particular case, on one of the first exhibits I had of my collection, somebody had placed a photograph of a boy in Central Park with a hand grenade. It's a famous image by Diane Arbus, right? It was one of the first images I bought. But they had placed it next to an Arnold Newman portrait of a man called Krupp, the German arms family who provided all the German armaments for both world wars, right? I'd already started playing with Teach Your Children in my last week with the Hollies in Leeds. So I had the basic idea. But seeing these two images together of this kid with a toy hand grenade that would have blown up the world, and this man that actually did blow up the world, I began to realize that if we didn't teach our kids a better way of dealing with our fellow human beings, we were in deep trouble here. And that's when I actually finished Teach Your Children. To think that I've been a part of this era of music for the last almost 50 years, it's quite stunning, really. I mean, I live my life by the second, of course, right? I think I'm doing good work, but you never know. I'm an incredibly lucky man. I've been able to do what I wanted to do since I was 18 years old. That's insane, I don't take it lightly either. It's a great responsibility to be alive.
Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh, and know they love you.
So I can't tell you what your why is or your purpose is. Only you know that. But I want to, in the end here, show you my purpose in this last video that's about 15 seconds long. Here we go.
Who's your favorite? You always tell me your favorite artist of all time.
Probably Paul McCartney.
Yep. Went
We got to go to the concert. You took me.
Yeah. And that was a cool experience.
That was one of the best experiences of my life.
So I want to talk about the experience for a minute. When I took my dad to Paul McCartney, it was, Jesus, it's been almost 12 years ago. You know, I didn't plan very well. I was late getting tickets, and this was before I interviewed artists, so I couldn't just get free concert tickets. I had to pay for them. The concert was sold out, and when I bought tickets, I bought them from a scalper, and they were really expensive. And, you know, I hesitated for a minute to buy those tickets because it was about $1,400 for 4 of them. But then I decided to do it. And, you know, I also hesitated when I told you earlier that we took our camera crew down to Idaho to capture where I came from and to film interviews with my dad, because it, you know, it was a lot of work and a lot of travel, big time commitment. We were very busy. But I got to tell you about those 2 experiences. I'm so grateful that I did, because those little choices had a life-changing impact. Because I'm sorry, I might get a little emotional here, but about a year ago, my dad passed away. He had a massive stroke. And a few hours before we pulled him off his respirator to let him go, I got to spend some time with him and say my goodbye. And he couldn't talk because he had the respirator, but he could blink his eyes, you know, and for yes or no. And he was completely paralyzed. But like I said, he could communicate with his eyes, and he expressed that he wanted to listen to some music with me. So I put headphones on him, and I played some Paul McCartney and some Beatles, and there was a feeling of gratitude that was passed between us. You know, gratitude for having gone to that concert together and have those memories. And I also played him "Teach Your Children," which is a song that Graham Nash just talked about. And it's a song that my father had explained the meaning to me many times in our music discussions when I was just a young boy. And I'd also heard the meaning directly from Graham Nash, who wrote it. But, you know, when I was sitting there at the hospital with my dad and listening to the song with him, that's when the meaning of that song really hit me. You know, as I looked at my dad, you know, for what would be the last time, and communicated with him, and tears ran down both our cheeks while that song played. It was clear when Graham's lyric, you know, as clear as his lyric, "And know they love you." My dad knew that I loved him, and I knew that he loved me, and there were no words that needed to be exchanged. It was just the music, that feeling. So I got to tell you, that's why evergreen content is so important, because that 45-minute interview that I did with my dad a few years back has since been seen by millions of Professor of Rock viewers in different formats. And most importantly, it's been seen by my mother, my wife, my siblings, and my own children, and they can share and pass that on to their children so that they can know a little bit of who their grandpa or great-grandpa or great-great-grandpa was. That content will live forever. So now whenever anyone asks me who my favorite interview is, I can tell you that right now. It's an easy answer. It's my dad. So, you know, continue the mission to make compelling, vital, and timeless evergreen content on YouTube or whatever format you choose to share it with the world, for all of us and for future generations to experience. And so with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up. We can take questions.
When we talked about doing this presentation, we wanted to give some time for people to ask questions. It's been an amazing time listening to you, Adam. So appreciate it. Questions, students, teachers, some of our district people. Go ahead. Adam's here. We'll take some time. I know we're at an hour. We can go a little longer. If you need to get off, that's great. But let's go until we can ask the questions that you want to ask of Adam.
Hey, Adam, Lane Finley here. Enjoyed this past hour. Your sincerity and thoughtfulness is just it's amazing. I didn't know what to expect coming on today, and Rod's talked you up, but wow, just appreciate the time here, and a lot of personal connection as well. Having a son and I took a similar, I guess, a leap of faith with him a few years ago. And we traveled down to Las Vegas to see Roger Waters, and an amazing experience to spend with my teenage son and talk about music and connect. As you look forward, obviously a lot of the greats in rock and roll are getting up there in age. Is there a sense of urgency that you feel to capture a lot of these interviews? And that being said, do you have a dream interview? Who would you love to sit down with and spend a little bit of time with?
Great question. Yeah, that's really cool. Roger Waters. That would be, I've never had a chance to see him. I've seen Pink Floyd with Gilmore, but yeah. So yes, there's definitely a sense of urgency, and there has been since we really started doing this, going out on the road. We, before the pandemic, we flew around to LA and Vegas and New York and Denver, Colorado, and any place we could. If it was in the back of a tour van or or backstage or wherever, we wanted to get these interviews and get them as best we could. Then the pandemic hit, and obviously, that shut down. So we use technology. I've done about 80 Zoom interviews over the last year to be able to still do these interviews. My dream interview unfortunately passed away about 6 months ago. It would have been Eddie Van Halen, a huge Van Halen fan. But my dream interview currently would probably be Billy Joel. I'm a big Billy Joel fan. I'd love to interview Bruce Springsteen. And of course, I'd love to interview Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley, but maybe some other time. Maybe down the road. Maybe that'll happen in a different life or something. But yeah, I would say Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen. I think Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam would be really interesting too. So, and I know I'll get those guys. Actually, before this started, I made a list of about 20 people that I wanted to interview that were kind of dream interviews, and I've been able to get about half those. So, hopefully now that the pandemic is dying down and we're able to do interviews, I'll get some of those. So, yeah, thank you for asking the question.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Even if we have students that want to jump in, I know we have classes and things. If any of the students have questions about technical questions too, about YouTube production and things like that.
Yeah, if you have any questions about like YouTube and what we've done over the last year and how we've been able to gain, so many fans subscribers, because I didn't know a thing about YouTube really a year ago. I've got some younger people that work with me that help me out with that. But yeah, any questions about that?
Adam, I have a question. It's interesting. You talked about setting up interviews. How do you do that? I mean, you just don't. You can't get people like this on the phone without some ends. And I suppose you've got some ends. So, what's the process of setting one of these up?
Well, so I'll tell you real quick how I started. I have no background in this at all. I've been an entrepreneur most of my life and own my own business. And I had a business that I started to help young people to get into music. I had a recording studio and marketing, kind of a development company to teach kids how to record and how to get into music. And I had the general manager of the ABC4 affiliate here in Utah was going to start a weekly program on ABC4 and the CW30 about local music and show bands on there. And he had me and about 15 other companies in the room to be possible sponsors of this show. And as he was telling what he was going to do with the show, I raised my hand and just said, we definitely want to support local music, but a lot of people have tried to do shows about local music and nobody really cares until they become Imagine Dragons or Neon Trees, two bands from Utah that have done well. I said, and you're trying to do about 35 shows a year, and I don't know if there's enough bands to fill up those slots, but what if you were able to interview people that were touring through Utah, because they're probably not as busy as they are when they go to LA or New York or whatever. what if you were to interview them and then use them as the headliner to pull in people who know about their music, and then use local music as the backdrop? And he said, man, I love how your music or how your mind works. So why don't you help me produce the show? I was kind of like, okay, I'd never produced TV or done anything. And so as we got going and he pulled me aside and asked me to help him produce the show, we were looking for somebody to host the show. And he said, let's do a test interview. Because we interviewed a bunch of different people and nobody really fit. And he said, why don't you do the interviews? Why don't we, do a test interview, see how you do? My first interview was with Kenny Loggins. I knew his music really well. It was supposed to be a 10 or 15-minute interview. It went an hour and a half because he wanted to keep going. And he said really like 15 minutes into the interview, this is the best interview I've ever done. And I thought he just told everybody that, so I didn't really take it too seriously. But he pulled me aside after the interview and just said, man, you have a gift and you really need to go after this. Let me open some doors for you. And so he helped me to get the next 2 or 3 interviews that I had, which were the Beach Boys and the Doobie Brothers and other people like that. And then from those 4 interviews or 3 interviews, I had them saying really nice things. And so I created a video of some of those things that they said about me and sent it around to publicists and managers. I just looked them up on the internet and set up other interviews from that. And they saw that and they said, well, gosh, if the Doobie Brothers and Kenny Loggins and the Beach Boys are calling this guy the Professor Rock, maybe I should do an interview. And so I sent out, I don't know, 100 emails and I got, 30 responses. Yeah, let's set up an interview. And then from there, those interviews started. And then after having done, about 50 interviews from there, I happened to meet somebody in the industry that saw something in me and partnered with me. And he's been in the music industry forever. And so he set up interviews from there. And then I went out and found some investors and did this on a bigger scale. But I think that experience just shows that preparation is really, really important. Luck is, I love the saying, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I was ready for the opportunity because I prepared all my life and just being passionate about music. And I think that, again, if you just put in the work, I sent out 100 emails. It took forever, but, I got 30% response from that. And from there, more interviews came. So I think, the greasy will, as they say. So you just gotta, if you're passionate about it and you really want to put in the work, you'll get there. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I'm Fred Smith from Fremont. I have a student here who would like to ask you a question, Adam.
Sure.
Hi. So who is your favorite interview and what made them your favorite interview?
Well, besides my dad, for the reason I shared at the end of this, my favorite interview, gosh, there have been so many. I really loved Carlos Santana because he was so positive. You could just feel his positive energy, the way he looked at the world. It was just amazing to feel that. And one of the keys to what I do is I always ask positive questions. Now, some people would say that you got to be edgy or you got to ask a controversial question or whatever, but I don't believe in that. I feel like if you're very respectful and if you ask really, really good questions that are very positive, that uplift, then I feel like you get some amazing responses from people. For some of the young people watching, Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco, that was a really great interview because he's another really positive guy that just is so grateful for what he has and his opportunities in music, and that shows through. You really do get a window into who they are as people. And there have only been, out of the 600 interviews I've done, or whatever it is, 598, I don't know. I know we're coming up on 600. There's only been 2 that have been jerks. So that's a pretty good ratio. These guys, I think what you find out is that they're regular people just like we are. And they have the same kind of insecurities and the same passions and joy and light and dark and all the kinds of experiences that we all have. They're just able to put it through music that makes that experience richer for us. So thank you for the question.
Adam, one of the questions in the chat was, or there's a question in the chat that said, asked, have you had anyone walk out of an interview?
Never have had somebody walk out of the interview. I did have David Crosby of Crosby, Stills and Nash, who's kind of a grumpy guy, say, you can ask me anything in the interview. You can ask me anything about anything. And then when I started asking him about Crosby, Stills and Nash, he said, I don't want to talk about Crosby, Stills and Nash. If you ask me another question about Crosby, Stills and Nash, I'm going to go eat Mexican food that I have in the fridge. And so
That's
I
great.
said, well, and I kind of got, had to kind of have some guts there. I said, well, we told you what the interview was up front, that it was going to be about, some of it was going to be about Crosby, Stills and Nash, and our viewers are going to be very interested in that. So I really need to be able to ask you a few more questions about that. I'll ask you about your new album. He's like, so he allowed me to do that, but he's like, nobody cares about Crosby, Stills and Nash. They want to know about my new music. And I was like, no, they don't. They want to know about your classic music. So good question.
Any other questions, you guys?
Yeah. Has there been anyone that really surprised you that turned out to be much different than you thought going into the interview?
Yeah, a lot of the metal guys surprised me because I've interviewed a lot of heavy metal artists, and they're just real, they're fathers and they're grandfathers now, and they love their kids, and they're very spiritual people, and they're, some of these people that when I was growing up, people were like, that's devil music, and that's not how they are at all. They're a lot of people like Ozzy Osbourne, for example. Ozzy Osbourne, he wrote a song that a lot of people said was satanic, and he actually explained that the song was about the Cold War. And he said people completely misinterpreted it. I wrote it about the Cold War that was going on in the early 80s. So, just stuff like that is very interesting. And I think that when I go into these interviews, I just want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to make any judgments. They're all people just like us, and I want to find out more about, what they mean and what they're doing. And, I find out that they're just very passionate about music, and their focus is to use music to help people through their trials, because they've gone through the same trials. So anyway.
Fred, you had a question.
Yeah. And this isn't really music related. It's more on the production side. How many people do you employ or as part of your production team? Because I think a lot of people see you as probably being because you're the person behind the camera, but there's a lot more people behind the scenes. So how many people do you have helping you that's employed by you or your production crew?
Great question. And that's really important. If you're going to create a great content that people are going to consume, you have to have a lot of support. It's kind of like what Carlos Santana said about having a support system. And we've been very fortunate. I've had the same people working with us for, 5+ years. I have a director of photography who films it. I have a couple of editors, 2 editors that edit the content, because we put out 5 to 6 pieces a week. And that takes a lot of editing, because they have to take the interviews and the music. And that's another thing that's really good, is that we've had a great attorney that helps us with music, because we fit under fair use. And so that took a lot of years and a lot of money and headache to figure out, but we've figured that out now. And so you're free and clear on the music I used here, because it is a conversation about the stories behind the songs and everything. So let's see, there's 1, 2, 3. Then I have my producing partner that sets up the interviews. And then I have a quality assurance sound guy who kind of does the final product. And then we have a colorist. So there's about 5 people plus an attorney. So there's about 6 people that we work with on a day-to-day basis. The attorney's more like a monthly basis, but so there's 5 people. Colorist, I didn't even know that you had to add color to something when I started this, that there's, a colorist that goes in and colors the footage and everything like that. So, so that's, and they're incredible. I mean, without their help, I would just be a talking head and have nothing, you know, but you know, that shouldn't discourage any of the students out there to try to make content, because honestly, you got a phone. I mean, everybody's got a phone. Even iPhones today can film 4K content or 1080 HD. So 1080p. You start with your phone, and I want to say something real quick about that. Is that anybody out there that can create a YouTube channel, it's all about consistency. You have to keep going. It might take you a year or two to build a following. Took us a year, even with, you know, interviewing some of the biggest rock stars out there. You know, if I give you an example, back in April when we started doing daily content on YouTube, you know, we got about 35,000 views in the first month, but then that turned into 600,000 views in the second month, and then 2 million views in the you know, fourth month, and so on and so forth. So it's just about consistency, even if it's just with your iPhone. It always starts with great content. If you have great content, people will forgive you for some of the production stuff. If you don't have perfect production, they'll forgive you for that if you have something interesting to say. And then if you're consistent with it, those are the two keys to creating the YouTube content. You just got to keep on going. It's kind of like that cartoon. You've probably seen it on social media, where the person he's got the pickaxe and he's been, you know, trying to find the diamonds, and it shows that he's been working for, you know, maybe a year trying to find these diamonds. And then in the next column, it shows him walking away, and he's this close. He's like a couple feet away from finding all the diamonds. You got to keep going. So does that answer your question? Great question, by the way.
Yeah, I bring it up because I know there's, as you grow, you sometimes just talking to some of the YouTube content creators, they hesitate to expand that support system because they micromanage. And so being willing to hire an editor and just to show the kids that there's jobs out there, not just you can help with content creation. You don't have to be there to create it all the time. But I on a follow-up question, how involved are you in like your thumbnails for YouTube and those things, or do you give someone autonomy over that, or do you kind of micromanage that, or what's your?
I work with a younger, say a millennial. He's about 24 years old. He's our colorist, but he's also really good at YouTube stuff. And we create the thumbnail together. I kind of bring the knowledge in about maybe the hook of how to get somebody to watch a certain song. And then he comes, and that's really important too, because I'm a Gen Xer, he's a millennial, and he's got insight into, I mean, our audience is honestly, you know, 75 to 80% of our audience is over the age of 30, but we still have a younger audience that's growing every day. We've got people anywhere from 15 to 25 that are about, you know, 12% of our base. It was only 1% at the beginning, and that will continue to grow. So, you know, he'll give me his take on, well, that's not really relevant to this. Maybe you try this. And so he'll push me on some of my hooks, and hooks are very important. You got to find a way to give people a reason to even click on your thumbnail. So he'll create the beautiful pictures and the thumbnail itself, and I'll just kind of help with the hook of how to get people to watch, you know, maybe a one-hit wonder from the 70s, why they should watch it, a story, you know, something from the story that's interesting. So we work on that together. I'd say it's pretty much 50-50. We help each other out with that. And then we, you know, adjust accordingly. If in the first hour or two that thumbnail's not working, we might try a different thumbnail. And actually, we've had a couple of pieces that have gone over, you know, 400,000 or 500,000 views that started out and failed in the first 2 or 3 hours until we got the thumbnail right. It's kind of crazy. Sometimes I do a mystery where I put a question mark and a silhouette and say, this band wrote this song and it languished, you know, this song languished for 10 years before it became a #1 hit. And then, you know, actually there was a Tom Petty video that we had where nobody watched it for the first 2 hours. And then we just changed it to, instead of saying, coming right out and saying it was Tom Petty, we said this song started out as a joke and it became his biggest hit, because it did start out as a joke. Free Fallin', the song Free Fallin' was just kind of a joke. They were messing around, and then it became a big hit. So when we changed that and we made it a mystery, all of a sudden we had hundreds of thousands of people watching it within, the time that we fixed it. Now it's become a huge piece for us. So that just kind of gives you an example that you got to adjust and you got to tweak this and tweak that. And it's always a battle. So
thank you.
And thank you.
Well, Adam, are there any other questions that you want to pose? Anyone on the call? We've recorded this and we want to, not all of our teachers were able to be here today. And so I thought maybe it would be a great thing to be able to share with other teachers and things. But on a personal level, Adam, I want to thank you. I'm sure you hear these stories all the time, but you did a piece not long ago. You did a piece on fathers. I know how much your dad means to you. And I listened to that. My friend Ryan, who introduced me to you, who may or may not be employed because he listens to everything you do. We're not exactly sure. He spends a lot of time on there. And he is in our friend group, in our 5-friend group, the king of useless information. And Ryan, it's funny that that's what you were called, because that's Ryan to us. And he loves everything about you, and he got me hooked on you. And he called me one time because he lost his father 2 or 3 years ago. And he said, you really got to listen to this. And he knows that over the last year, my own father has nearly passed away on at least 2 occasions. I've held his hand and thought maybe this was it, and you did this program on fathers, and you had great songs on there, Dance with My Father and Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years, all great songs. I added to that afterwards and listened to That's My Job by Conway Twitty and Leader of the Band, because they talk about a cabinet maker's son, which is who I am. Cabinet maker's son. And after I listened to that, my dad called me and said, "Hey, who are you watching the game with?" And music wasn't our connection. It was athletics. And he called me and said, "Who are you watching the game with?" I went over to his house. I could have watched it at my house for sure. And we went over during the Final Four and watched the Gonzaga UCLA game. And that's been our connection all our life. And as I sat there with him, something about the moment crystallized. And not to be too sentimental, but I knew it was something special. And there at the end of the game, those of you that watched the game, UCLA makes a shot, tie the game right at the end. They inbound the ball, and Jalen Suggs goes down for Gonzaga and leans into basically a half-court shot to win the game. We all jumped up and down in that moment, hugged each other. I got a chance to hug my dad again, and I just want to tell you how much what you're doing causes people to reflect and kind of go back, and that, but it did for me too. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for the time that you put in, and thanks for making meaning felt for a long time. It's when my wife and I, when we got married or when we got engaged, we went up to Sundance, and they have a program there called the Bluebird Cafe. They bring in songwriters from Nashville, and that's the night that we got engaged. It was there. I just bought tickets yesterday for this summer. It'll be the 26th year that we've done that. So I get to hear the stories behind country songs. So I love what you're doing. Really appreciate everything. Thanks for your time today too. And we look forward to talking to you more down the road.
Anytime. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the great questions, and go after it, guys. Go after it. This is really for all the students and the teachers. It's never too late. You've got a passion about something, whether it's sports or music or movies, like I said, politics, whatever it is, share that with the world and put it out there. And we all have an iPhone, so record those moments. They're really important, because when your loved ones are gone, you'll be so grateful that you have that, like sharing that memory. I'm so grateful I have this interview. I'll end on this and then I'll let you guys go. I was talking to my mom late last night. She called, and I try to check up with her every day. And we were talking, and I was kind of preparing some of the videos, and I had that video of my dad, and I said, "Hey, you want to hear a familiar voice?" And I played it, and she just burst into tears, and she said, "I'm so grateful that you have that. It's so great to hear his voice." And he loved to tell those stories to you, and it was just a great moment. So it's really, really important. And we don't have any excuse anymore, because every one of us has one of these things. So take a moment every day. And, I do that with my kids. I've done an interview every year with my kids, just, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite movie? And then I compare them throughout the years. And I'm grateful that I have that. So keep at it, guys. Thank you so much. As I say on my program at the end, 3 chords and the truth.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Okay.
You can jump on. If you want to stay on for a minute, Adam, we can talk. You can stop that recording if you want, Trev.